Hey. So a thing that you hear me say all the time is this word called fascia.
Hello, Masha. Hello, Fascia.
And I can't tell you how many times people are like, what is that? Like, what are you talking about?
What you talking about?
And so today I wanted to give you a couple of analogies, a little science, and why it's important. So fascia is what's considered an extracellular matrix. And essentially what that means is that if it's not bone, if it's not organ tissue, or it's not muscle, it's fascia, okay? It's non-vascular, and it has this really incredible kind of like out of a science fiction book property called thixotropy. When you look at it under a microscope, fascia is this three-dimensional, highly plastic, non-formed fluid. And it has all these different really cool things in it, but essentially it's like collagen and water and a whole bunch of other stuff. But those are pretty much it. That's considered ground substance. Now that's not a word you're gonna hear me say a lot, ground substance, ground substance, ground substance. What are you talking about? But it is something that, is kind of cool to know. And what you can kind of think of fascia like is an organ of form. So your musculature, right, like your hamstring or whatever, without fascia, it could stretch and retract really as far as you wanted it to. It has a lot of plasticity, a lot of rebound, kind of like a rubber band. And the fascia holds it together and gives it shape. You can think of it kind of like a plastic bag, but like a plastic bag that's everywhere. It doesn't just wrap your muscle. And what's really kind of cool is that your fascia forms before your muscle. And it actually shows your muscle tissue when you're growing where to go. And when you understand those things about it, you can see that it's really one of the major players in how you move, what you feel like. 80% of your nerves live in your superficial fascia. So what that means, superficial fascia, is that you have your skin, your integumentary system, and then you have your fascia, before you have muscle, before you have bone, any of that. And so when someone touches your skin, what's responding is your fascia, really.
Fascia.
And when you have some kind of range of motion issue, well, that's your fascia. And when you feel pain, chronic pain, that's your fascia. And when you do feel chronic pain, essentially what's happening is that you have all of these layers of fascia, and you have tons of them, that begin to dehydrate. And I'm not talking cellular dehydration, although that does play a part. I'm talking fascial dehydration, kind of like an island of tension and goop in this fluid sea. And so if you think about it, if your nerve endings are kind of swimming in this sea, and then there's an area that gets really tight, well, you're gonna feel it. Just like if I were to scratch at an area for a long time, it gets irritated and kind of annoyed. So that's what chronic pain really on a functional level is. Let's just go one level higher and think about fascia like a sponge. When a sponge is dry, it's brittle, it's hard. If you bend it, it might crack, just like our joints. And when you put water into it, it becomes supple and absorbent. You can twist it, and it even kind of gets soft, right? That's literally the same function that our fascia behaves like. And so that's one of the reasons why massage works, why movement works, why stretching works. Speaking of stretching, let's talk about range of motion and how fascia plays a role in that. So now I want you to think about fascia a little bit higher up, right? So now we're kind of going further out. You can think of it like a deck of cards. So you have these layers upon layers of fascia, and your range of motion has to do with this deck of cards. So you can contract down as far as that deck of cards comes together. And then you can get as long as those deck of cards can stack against one another. When you do a bicep curl, let's think about that. How far in you can get is going to be determined by how many of those cards can stack on top of one another, and how long you can get, say behind you, is how far those cards can lay against one another. Now, think about dehydration. What that means is that it gets sticky and it gets hard. And it's kind of like if some of those cards got stuck together, but like halfway. And so what that means is that when you're trying to contract your muscle and you kind of feel weak, even though you know that you've been working out and you should be getting stronger, well, sometimes you're plateauing because your fascia is dehydrated. And of course, we all know stretching, right? So the elongation process, if some of those cards are stuck together, they can't lay side by side, you're gonna lose range of motion. So it's not just how far out you can get, but also how much you can contract. And so what's really cool is that when you deal with that superficial fascia, with massage or stretching and even heat, you can actually create and affect a change that is profound for how strong you can get and how fast you can go. And, since we all get old, how you age, how you get out of bed in the morning, how you move around, how easy it is to pick something up off the floor. So fascia plays this humongous role, and most of us don't even know what it is. So I love nerding out about fascia. If you have any questions about this, comment below. I'll be happy to answer them, and maybe we can even do a little video on it, okay?